I work the graveyard patrol in a jurisdiction where the trees outnumber the people 10,000 to 1. It is a vast, deeply isolated county, dominated by dense pine forests, winding dirt logging routes, and sprawling properties owned by people who value extreme privacy. You get used to the quiet. You learn to appreciate the long hours of driving through pitch-black roads with nothing but the hum of the engine and the dashboard lights to keep you company. But the extreme isolation also means that when something goes wrong out here, help is a very long way away. My partner and I were parked near a deserted county intersection, drinking lukewarm coffee from thermos flasks, when the radio mounted on the dashboard crackled to life. The dispatcher's voice broke through the static. She was a veteran operator, someone who usually handled horrific car accidents and domestic disputes with a flat, unwavering calm. Tonight, her voice was entirely different. Her tone was elevated, tight with genuine stress. "Unit 4, I need you to respond to a 1054 at the estate at the end of the Upper Ridge Road," the dispatcher said. "I have an open line with the homeowner. He is frantic. I cannot get a clear read on the situation." My partner grabbed the radio microphone. "Dispatch, can you confirm the nature of the intruder? Is the caller providing a description?" "Negative," the dispatcher replied, a faint tremor echoing over the frequency. "The caller is not speaking to me anymore. I am just hearing background noise. It sounds like heavy hooves, like livestock stomping on a hardwood floor. And a man screaming." The transmission cut off, leaving a heavy, oppressive silence in the cab of our cruiser. My partner and I exchanged a single, hard look. He dropped the vehicle into drive, flipped on the emergency lights without hitting the sirens, and floored the accelerator. The drive took nearly 20 minutes. The paved highway eventually gave way to a deeply rutted, unpaved gravel road that wound steeply up into the heavily forested hills. The tree canopy grew incredibly dense, the interlocking branches blocking out the moonlight and creating a suffocating tunnel of darkness around the speeding cruiser. We finally breached the tree line and pulled into a massive circular driveway. The property was a sprawling, multi-story log cabin built from incredibly thick, dark timber. It belonged to a notoriously wealthy big game hunter, a man who spent his fortune traveling the globe to harvest exotic trophies. The house sat in total darkness. Not a single exterior light was burning. We stepped out of the cruiser, drawing our heavy flashlights and our service weapons. The night air was freezing. We approached the front porch, keeping our boots light on the wooden planks. We did not need to knock. The massive, heavy oak front door had been completely obliterated. The thick wooden panels were fractured and splintered, but the damage had not been inflicted by someone trying to break in. The jagged shards of wood were pushed outward, pointing toward the porch. Someone, or something, had violently smashed their way out of the house. "Someone wanted out in a massive hurry," my partner whispered, holding his weapon tightly against his chest as he swept his flashlight over the broken threshold. "Or something pushed them out," I replied, keeping my voice incredibly low. We stepped carefully over the splintered wood and entered the cabin. The interior was a cavernous, vaulted space completely dedicated to death. The walls were lined top to bottom with an absurd collection of taxidermy mounts. Massive grizzly bears stood in the corners, permanently frozen in aggressive, roaring postures. Timber wolves stalked across the upper lofts, and dozens of heavily antlered deer heads protruded from the dark timber walls. Our flashlight beams swept across the room, catching the reflection of hundreds of polished glass eyes staring blindly back at us from the dark. The air inside the house was thick and stale, smelling heavily of formaldehyde and fresh, pooling blood. "Clear the ground floor," my partner ordered, moving slowly toward the kitchen archway. "Keep your angles tight. Whatever did this could still be in here." I moved toward the massive stone fireplace dominating the center of the living room. The heavy leather furniture had been tossed aside, the heavy coffee table overturned and splintered. I found the homeowner resting against the base of the stone hearth. He was dead. The scene was incredibly brutal. His chest and abdomen had been violently gored, punctured by multiple deep, jagged wounds that were entirely too wide and ragged to have been caused by a knife or a spear. The fabric of his flannel shirt was shredded, soaked through with dark blood that pooled heavily onto the rugs beneath him. His eyes were wide open, locked in an expression of terror. "I have a victim," I called out softly. "He is gone. Massive puncture trauma." My partner emerged from the kitchen, stepping carefully around the overturned furniture to reach my side. He aimed his light down at the body, his jaw setting into a hard, rigid line. "If this was a bear or a feral animal that got inside, we would see muddy tracks," my partner said, sweeping his flashlight across the pristine hardwood floors surrounding the blood pool. "There is no mud. There are no paw prints leading to the door." I lowered my beam to the floor, tracking the space immediately surrounding the victim. My partner was right. There were no tracks. However, there was a distinct, highly unusual trail leading away from the body toward the dark hallway branching off the living room. It was a trail of dry, yellowed synthetic stuffing, small clumps of brittle animal hair, and thin, rusted pieces of shaping wire. I followed the trail of debris with my light, letting the beam travel slowly up the adjacent timber wall. The wall was decorated with a series of framed Polaroid photographs. They featured the homeowner standing proudly in this exact living room, holding a hunting rifle, posing beneath his various trophies. I looked closely at the photograph positioned directly at eye level. It showed the man smiling widely, standing beneath a truly massive, record-breaking elk head mounted on a heavy wooden plaque above the stone fireplace. I immediately raised my flashlight, aiming the concentrated beam directly at the space above the stone hearth. The heavy wooden plaque was securely bolted to the timber, but the plaque was entirely empty. The iron bolts that normally secured the mount had been violently ripped outward. The massive elk head was missing. "The elk is gone," I said, a cold knot forming rapidly in my stomach. "What are you talking about?" my partner asked, keeping his weapon aimed down the dark hallway. "Look at the picture on the wall," I insisted, pointing my beam at the photograph and then back up to the empty wooden plaque. "Look at the mount. It was ripped off the wall." Before my partner could process the missing trophy, a sound echoed from the deep darkness of the hallway. It was a heavy thud. Clop, clop, clop. It sounded exactly like hard, solid hooves striking the wooden floorboards, moving with a heavy, unnatural, dragging gait. We immediately raised our weapons, aligning our flashlight beams perfectly down the narrow corridor. "Police department! Show yourself right now!" my partner yelled, his voice booming aggressively through the silent, cavernous house. The clopping sound stopped. A shape stepped slowly out of an adjacent side room, entirely blocking the hallway. My brain completely rejected the visual information entering my optic nerves. It was a patchwork, horrifying abomination of stitched flesh and wire. The massive, decapitated head of the missing elk was roughly, violently sewn onto the thick, hulking torso of a grizzly bear. The creature stood upright on a set of mismatched, decaying animal legs that buckled and twitched under the uneven weight. Thick, Crude black sutures crisscrossed the matted fur, bursting open in several places to reveal dry, yellowed stuffing and rusted metal armature wire protruding from the seams. The elk head scraped against the ceiling, the massive antlers gouging deep grooves into the drywall. The creature's neck snapped at an impossible angle, and its dead glass eyes caught the glare of our flashlights. "Drop your—" my partner screamed, completely unable to finish the standard command, as his mind failed to comprehend the monstrosity standing before us. The creature lunged forward. It moved with a terrifying, jerky speed, its mismatched hooves tearing into the floorboards as it lowered the massive antlers directly toward our chests. My partner fired his weapon rapidly, the deafening cracks of the caliber handgun echoing violently in the enclosed space. I watched the bullets strike the center of the creature's stitched chest. The impacts produced small, explosive puffs of dry dust and stuffing. The creature did not flinch. It did not even slow down. The bullets simply passed harmlessly through the dry hide and the wire frame. "Move!" I yelled, grabbing my partner by the shoulder and dragging him backward. We scrambled away from the hallway, diving frantically into a heavy set of double doors located just off the main living area. We slammed the thick oak doors shut behind us, the heavy brass latch engaging with a sharp click. "Brace it!" my partner shouted. We threw our combined body weight against a massive, solid wood bookshelf sitting against the wall, dragging it aggressively across the carpet until it completely blocked the double doors.